So I want to share a couple stories, excuse me, about my horse, Fuersti. He's 23 years old, gelding. His dad is a Hanoverian for horse people here, and his mom is a thoroughbred. And I've known him since he was a year and a half old. He's 23, and he's always been kind of a dorky guy. And he's not really in his body. He's kind of clumsy. I mean, he's a beautiful mover. He's gorgeous, but he kind of doesn't pay attention. He doesn't much care what you think. He's a really funny guy. Um, but here's the story, and I don't quite know what if there's a moral or a point. But yesterday, or 2 days ago, I let him out in the pasture. I'm in northern Illinois, so it's still kind of winter pasture. And I walk his sister around it. There's a path. She foundered last year. She can never in her whole life ever again have grass. So I can't let her out in the pasture. And so he's not getting any exercise. It's kind of a bad situation. So I walk her once or twice a day around the pasture, and and then he will go and he'll follow us and he'll run, and he has a good time for a little bit of time. And 2 days ago, he got burrs all over him. There's burrs in the pasture along the edges. I'm going to have this addressed. Somebody's going to come mow it in a couple of weeks when it stops raining. This really tall, with big burrs on him, horrible, along the edges. So of course that's where he has to go. So he always has some on his body and a few in his mane and some in his tail, and I clean him out. It's not a big deal. Well, 2 days ago, he came back. I don't know what he was thinking or not thinking, and he stuck his head in the burrs. I didn't see him do it, but when he came out, I'm talking everywhere. I thought I was going to have to roach his mane, which is cutting it down to like this big. I was so angry with him. I couldn't believe it. There's this stuff you can use called Cowboy Magic that you can get the stuff out. It's $14 a tube. I used a third of a tube, and then I found some baby oil, and I just squirt, and I got the rest. It was I cut my hands up. I got cuts all over my hands from these things. What were you thinking? Why would you stick your head in there? I was so mad. I said, do not ever do that again. And the next day when I let him out, I put a little bit of Cowboy Magic in his hair ahead of time, which I should have done initially, but it wasn't that much. It was just kind of keep the stuff from sticking on. And he ran around and he came back, and he had burrs on his body. They came out real easily with a comb. And he had none on his head. He had like two. And I was like, and he looked at me. He heard me. He knew that he got in trouble and he wasn't supposed to do that again. And you may think, no, that was coincidence and it's because you put stuff on it. And yeah, that was part of it. But he didn't do what he had done because I asked him not to. And it reminded me that when he was a baby and my horse, Nikos, my heart horse, came to live in this, we were all in the same place. And Nikos had a fly mask on. He was older, so flies like to get in their eyes. And we lived across the street from cattle. And I came home one day, and Fuersti had pulled off Nikos's mask. And I was so mad because his eyes were full of flies. And I said, Fuersti, and he would do that kind of thing. He was just constantly pulling my clothes off, and he was annoying. He was a baby. And I told him, don't ever do that again. And he never did that again. Never. And then I had a dog like this. You told her something once, my Alika, my heart dog, and she never did it again. No reminder. And that's how first he was. And then one other story was when we moved to a barn, and there was one horse there who'd been living by himself all this time. It was awful, mostly in a stall. And I let them all, with permission, I let them all out together once in the arena to run. And first he started chasing him, and he was an older, smaller horse. And first I thought they were just playing. And after like a minute, I realized the horse, Danny, wasn't his name. I can't remember. I love that horse too. He was not enjoying it. And so I said, Fuersti, and he stopped. And I said, don't do that. That's not fun for him. You need to stop. And he stopped, and he went and did something else. And I was stunned by it, and he never bothered him again. They played mate with nose, never chased him again. So I don't know the moral of the story. It's not just talking about my horse. It's very often people, I'm teaching a level 2 a more advanced animal communication class now. I have been teaching beginner class for many years, but I'm teaching this one. And even in that class, people a bit more advanced, there's people who still are nervous about, I'm not sure I can do this. I can hear them, but I'm not sure when I talk if they can hear me, if I can make them hear me. I'm like, they hear you. They hear you. That doesn't mean they're going to do what you're telling them to do, you know, but they hear you. And more and more and more, I see evidence of that in my clients' animals. And when I will tell them, just sit quietly, breathe, and talk from here. Just tell your dog that that you're leaving for a week. I mean, I do this work professionally too. Yes, hire me. But also you can tell them, they hear you. So I guess that's the moral. And Fuersti, I mean, because Fuersti's just such an airhead. He's such a flippin' riot. I mean, you got this guy, he's a clown. And he hears me. And I'm also blessed that he pays attention. So anyway, there's just a little story, something to think about. They understand more than you think they do. Not the words. I don't know how it works, how it gets translated from English into what they understand, or how, we hear them and it becomes English or whatever language it is you speak. I don't know how it works, but it does. We understand each other much more than you may realize. So that's my little story for today. I'm Pam Sorellis of wingedhorsehealing.com, and I will see you again soon. Take care.